5 of my interview series. Hopefully, we got some people tuning in here in a minute. Today I have a very special guest. We have Dr. Christy Halbert. Now, this lady, listen, she's going to be humble. She's going to be very, very humble. But I have to hit her with this immaculate introduction that I got for her here. So, and I was going to try to read it off, or not try to read it off, but there's just too many things. I'm telling you, I knew I'd forget a couple, so I got to read it off. All right. So we have Dr. Christy Halbert, former 2012 Olympic coach for Team USA, a IWBHF inductee, a member of the board of directors for USA Boxing, author of The Ultimate Boxer, a book that we're going to talk about here in a little bit. And she's an expert in the sweet science. And last but not least, she is the owner and head coach of Fighters Nashville. And also, she runs a nonprofit called Boxing Resource Center. So now I'm out of breath, man. All those accolades, Coach. I'm telling you, it's crazy. But thank you very much for your time. We appreciate you coming on. I've had the opportunity to train under you, and for the short period of time I lived in Nashville, but we built a great relationship, and she was, wanting to come on here, and I was like, hey, I would love to have you. So thank you so much for your time, and we'll get right into it.
Thanks for having me. It's
absolutely,
gonna be
fun. Absolutely. It's going to be a good time. We're going to have a good time. All right, so let's get right into it. You are, I like to call you a pioneer when it comes to women's boxing, but even more important than that, you are a big name in the amateur scene. Honestly, just the boxing scene in general, but more specifically amateur. Olympic style boxing. So I kind of wanted to start out with, let's get right into that. Let's talk about what do you believe like the core and the main purpose for amateur Olympic style boxing is?
Well, first of all, I would say that I'm attracted to Olympic style boxing or amateur boxing, or some people call it athletic boxing or point-based boxing. I'm really attracted to that because I was a professional boxer back before women could be amateurs in the United States. And then I started coaching amateur boxing, and I realized that that's really what I was interested in, was kind of the athletic side of boxing, as opposed to the entertainment side and the money side. So there's a lot that goes with that money side and that entertainment side. And so I was really more attracted because I was a college athlete. I was a Division I college athlete, and so that's what I was accustomed to. That's what feels natural and normal to me, and so that's why I've focused on the amateur side mostly.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So honestly, that's a perfect segue into your background. I wanted to kind of, I'd heard you were a D1 athlete, and kind of, I guess, let's talk about that a little bit, and like maybe how that kind of segued you into coaching a little bit. Was there some kind of relation to that? You think you just like love sports and just kind of went into it, or?
No, not at all. No, I got into boxing because I needed money.
Yeah.
That's the only reason I boxed. I needed to fix a car. It was going to cost $500 to fix it. And I did a 2-day professional boxing kind of tournament. Sometimes they're called Tough Man. This one was called a King and Queen of the Hill contest.
Yeah.
And didn't tell anybody. I borrowed a friend's vehicle to get there, and I didn't tell anybody because I wanted to be able to bail if I thought it was sketchy, because I didn't know anything about it. But I ended up, it was a 2-day event. I won, and I thought, that's the craziest thing I've ever done. I'll enjoy, I got the car fixed, bought some new blue jeans and went out to dinner, that kind of thing.
Yeah,
and college student, because it was my last semester of college. And so I thought, I'll certainly never do anything like that again, but it'll make for an interesting story in my life. But then I went on to graduate school, and in my master's program, I ended up studying women professional boxers because everyone had only studied up until that point. All the research was only on men, and then so to do that, I also trained in a gym and was a poor graduate student. So I started boxing professionally just to supplement my income.
Yeah.
But I was meeting more and more people in the gym and seeing how gyms operated, back in the day. And I realized that I had a soft spot for those boxers that were being ignored by the coaches. The coaches didn't think they could make money on them, so they weren't giving them any time and attention. And I mean, certainly I had never thought I was going to be a boxing coach. I certainly never set out to do that, but I just kept seeing boxers, running into boxers that needed my help.
Right.
And so I started coaching, and that was a good fit for me because I didn't have any ties to tradition at all. All
Right.
of my boxing knowledge was coming from that transferring my own experience in three different sports I played in high school and then two in college. And so I was able to transfer that skill and knowledge of basic good practices in sport and the science part of sport.
Yeah.
And then I was really a student of the sport. So it gave me fresh eyes to the sweet science,
Yeah.
essentially. So I was really successful with that. And then USA Boxing uh, caught my eye, and I caught their eye, I guess,
Yeah.
and started coaching on the national program. Started my own gym at that point. I didn't want my own gym either, but basically because my style was so different, I had this scientific approach. I'm big on science, and I was finding it difficult to find a gym home that would embrace that, you know, scientific approach. And I needed a home that would be welcoming to all people,
Yeah.
and so I had to basically start my own gym, and so I started Boxing Resource Center in 2001. We've been in this facility we call Fighters. We've been in this facility since 2019.
Yeah.
But 2001 was really interesting because that was the first women's world championship.
Yeah.
So that was a big year for me because I started my own gym and was the head coach of Team USA for the first women's world championships in Scranton, Pennsylvania.
Awesome.
So that was a lot of fun, really cool. And so then just was doing really well on the international boxing, and eventually that culminated into the 2012 Olympic Games, where I was an assistant coach and technical advisor. I worked with Bashir Abdullah was our head coach for that team, and Al Mitchell was another technical advisor for that team. And so my job at the 2012 Olympics, I was focused on analysis of opponents, building strategy,
Yeah.
analyzing referee and judge behavior, all of their tendencies, all of those patterns. And yeah, that 2012 team was great to work with.
They're
I know.
killer.
Yeah, I know, and you follow a lot of
Yeah.
those pro guys. So I was trying to remember, you know, some of who was on that team. Do you remember who was on the team
Yeah.
offhand?
Yes. So I wrote a bunch of them down. There's probably a couple I missed, but we had Marlon Esparza, Clarissa Shields, Jamel Herring, Errol Spence, JoJo Diaz, Queen Underwood, and Terrell Gausha. He actually just fought on the tank card last weekend. Unfortunately, he came up short against Carlos Adames at 160, but it was still a title fight. He's been a world champion, multiple world champions on this list. Pretty amazing to like just say that you got to work with some of those names. You know what I mean?
Oh
So
yeah, I mean,
awesome.
yeah. So Rashi Warren,
Yeah.
from
Yeah.
Cincinnati,
Yep.
Southpaw. He That was his third Olympic Games. So
Wow.
he was an Olympian in '04 and '08 as well as 12. And then Joseph Diaz from California, another
Yeah.
Southpaw, super humble guy. I just remember, you know, he listened well, great conditioning.
Yeah.
Lost his second, I think it was his second bout. He lost to the number one ranked Cuban.
Yeah.
You know, so that was a tough draw for him. And I know that if he had stayed for 2016, he would have been a gold medalist. I
Oh, for
really
sure.
I really believe that. Jose Ramirez was on
Yeah.
that
Jose
team
Ramirez was another one.
from California. Hard
Yeah.
worker, did everything the coaches asked for him.
Yeah.
Had to make some transitions from the pro style,
Yeah.
and he lost to the eventual bronze medalist. And that pro style, very interesting because, you know, back in 2012 that was the point based system,
Yeah.
and so it was, and now they go by pro style scoring. But back in the point based system, when we would have these camps going into large major tournaments, because now you can be in a on the national team and you get training year round. But back in our day, boxing was not didn't have a lot of funding, and so we would have these
Yeah.
camps before major competitions. And so some of the boxers that really had that strong professional style, we would just have to try to get them to also add a little bit to their outside game. It was really important with that point based system.
Most definitely.
Jamel, you mentioned Jamel on the
Yeah.
team. You know, U.S. Marine Corps.
Yeah.
Boxer. Another southpaw, all business, solid. Errol Spence from Texas, southpaw.
You guys
Skilled.
had a lot of southpaws on that team, huh?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And
Wow.
that can make a difference. And there
Yeah.
are even some countries where they predominantly have southpaws. We didn't recruit for that, but I know some countries recruit for that
Oh yeah.
because everybody has trouble with southpaws, including southpaws.
Yeah. Oh, I know.
Um,
Listen, I'm a wrong hander myself, so I totally understand where
yeah,
that's
that's
coming from.
right. Yeah.
But
So
hey,
Errol,
you're right though. When you go against another southpaw, I'm so used to sparring right-handers all day that as soon as I get into a southpaw, I'm like, I don't even know what to do with my own kind.
yeah, exactly,
It's like
exactly. So Errol was interesting because I think it was his second bout. Uh, yeah, because it was against India, and the referee was sketchy. We thought, and so we immediately filed a protest and got that overturned on video review.
wow.
And so because of the referee issues, and
Yeah.
then he eventually lost to the eventual bronze medalist. So Errol made top 8 at the
Wow.
Olympics. And then you mentioned Terrell from Ohio,
Yep.
fast learner, man, got a mind for boxing, that guy.
Yeah.
Marcus Brown was on that
Yeah.
team.
Marcus Brown
New
too. Yeah.
York. Yep, another southpaw.
Yeah.
Michael Hunter from
Yeah.
Nevada was on that team.
Yeah.
And then Dominique Brazil
Brazil. Yeah. Yeah.
was on that team. I don't do you know a lot about him? Because his story was super interesting because
Yeah.
he came out of that All American Heavyweights program in
Yeah.
California. I don't know if you ever heard of that because that might have been before your time, but it was a project in California that was started by Michael King
Okay.
of like a bunch of big TV like game shows and stuff.
Yeah.
I want to say like Wheel of Fortune or Jeopardy or something like that.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
so he wanted to restore, like, heavyweight greatness in the United States, so he started this program and recruited these heavyweight guys out of football. So Dominique was a quarterback at, I wanna say, University of Northern Colorado,
Okay.
like
Northern Colorado.
6'7", like 270 pounds, something like that, and
Yeah.
I just remember he was total sponge. As a former college athlete, he knew sports, but, didn't know boxing, so he was a total sponge, tried everything that we asked of him,
Yeah.
but he just lacked experience.
Yeah.
And that so in general, I would say on the men's side, the main thing was that we needed to get the guys to start fast
Yeah.
or faster, not pace themselves like pros. Make
Right.
sure that they win the first round. Winning the first round super important,
Most
and
definitely.
then also stay busy
Yeah.
because especially with that blow by blow scoring like we had in 2012, you're not going to get points unless you throw punches. You
Right.
know, so, a little bit different now with a 10 point, but still. So,
Yeah.
and then on the women's side, we had 3 opportunities to qualify. We qualified all 3 women. Marlena Esparza from Houston,
Yep.
she lost to the former world champion from China, but Marlene earned a bronze medal.
Yeah.
Queen Under was the
Yep.
she lost to a southpaw from England by the name of Natasha Jonas, who's
Oh
a
man.
Yep, very successful
Nothing
pro.
to hang your hat on there because she's went to
Exactly,
the big things in the pro boxing scene.
exactly. And
Yeah.
then of course Clarissa from Flint, Michigan. She got a gold medal. Uh, Clarissa was only 17 when the Olympics came, and she worked super hard in the camp. She beat Sweden, Kazakhstan, and Russia to win
Wow.
her bracket. And I would say her age was like the best thing she had going for her, and also it was kind of scary to have somebody 17 years old
Yeah.
in the Olympics, but she did it, and total banger. Clarissa loves to fight.
She does.
Uh, low hands, yes, she had low low
Yeah.
hands. Sit on the ropes, yes. But she made up for all of that by being explosive, and her mental toughness. Like at the age of 17, it was almost like she didn't. Sometimes it didn't register that she needed to be nervous. She just the that really cool energy of a 17-year-old taking that into the Olympic
Yeah.
Games.
And that's kind of one of those things too. I feel like that calmness and that energy is just something that, I think it can be taught, maybe coached a little bit, but it's just kind of something that's just there too, that ability is to get in there and just rock it out and do it and kind of cancel the noise. You know what I mean? Because as a 17-year-old, I mean, you could have very easily like got in there and just freaked out. You're on the
Oh yeah,
biggest
for sure.
stage.
For sure. Yeah. No, she had the confidence of a teenager for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is just something else. But
Yeah.
so I kind of want to dig into that. You said that like they switched the point, like the point scoring a little bit from then to
Yeah.
now. So what exactly, like, what are some main differences, I guess, between the way they used to score and kind of how they do now?
So the way it used to be scored, you had to land a punch on the target area without being picked, parried, or blocked, without infringing on a rule. You had to land with the knuckle portion of the glove. So remember back then the knuckles were colored white, so you could
Yep.
see that it was the knuckle.
Yep.
So it's real athletic. I mean, for lack of a better word, athletic style. And then when the president of the International Federation and the president and the executive director had the idea to try to get professional boxers into the games, and
Yeah.
that was going to start in 2016. And so, in an effort to make it easy for those pros to transition, they ended up changing a lot of the rules, including taking the headgear off of men, changing the scoring system, going to 3 minutes, 3 rounds, 3 minutes. And the scoring system they went to was the 10-point must.
Yeah.
And it's there's a lot of criticism of the 10-point must system in professional boxing. In professional boxing, you got 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 rounds.
Right.
In Olympic style or amateur boxing, you only have 3 rounds. So the 10-point must system is super challenging for amateur boxing, but it also is because it is that kind of pro style that can work for you. We have a lot of boxers with the U.S. kind of flair that can do well
Yeah.
if they're able to get inside and get to work.
Yeah, absolutely. So what would you say, I guess, for people that maybe are just more of spectators, that maybe haven't boxed before or haven't really looked into styles and stuff, what would you say would is like kind of the biggest thing that separates like more of an amateur boxing style as opposed to a pro style? Like, would it just kind of be like the cadence maybe, or is it just, like, are you maybe able to get away with having lower hands in the pros, but maybe not as much in amateurs? Like, what's kind of your thoughts on that?
Well, there's a time and a place for everything. So if
Yeah.
you want to have low hands as an amateur, I support that as long as it's not a habit.
Right.
If it's a habit, then we got problems because
Yeah.
habits can be exploited. So as long as it's not a habit, I'm okay with it. But we also have to have a lot in your toolbox. You can't on the pro level, your manager, your promoter, they're selecting your opponents, and they
Right.
can hand pick those opponents at least up to a certain point.
Yeah.
And so your style, they can choose opponents that work
Right.
for your style. On the amateurs, you got to be able to box anybody at any time. You got to be able to box multiple times in a week.
Yeah.
You got to be able to make that weight because you don't want to fight the scale.
Right.
You want to have your want to leave your fight for in the ring.
Right.
So that's a big part of it. And then the scoring, yeah, on the amateur side, you do have to be able to box on the outside,
Yeah.
even if what you're trying to do is eventually get to the inside. But
Yeah.
that's why sometimes, our best domestic boxers, they have a hard time with international opponents because those international opponents are really skilled on the outside.
Yeah.
And so unless they start accumulating that experience, it can be a tough transition for them.
Oh, I believe it, and that's actually one thing that kind of stuck with me when I came down to Nashville and I was training under you there for a little bit. Is you and I like how you said there's a time and place for everything because that really stuck with me because my coach that I started out boxing with, um, you know, all shout out. all praise, nothing, no hate against him because he got me into the sport and he taught me everything I needed to know to get started. But he was very, very strict on high guard, everything high guard, And I kind of got to you guys and I noticed that a lot of your guys as boxers had more of like that free flowing, you're able to kind of play with your lead hand a little bit. If you're within a certain range, you guys are okay with hands maybe a little lower to do that rest. And that was one thing I saw that I was like, in my head at first, I was like, that, it was like a red flag to me. It kept popping off. But then you explained, you're like, there's different distances and you could do different things at these distances. And I was like, so I don't have to be like this all the time. So that was one thing that really stuck with me with you guys' training for sure. But all right, so I kind of want to talk a little bit about you, like the beginning of you getting into coaching. Just kind of double back on that a little bit. So I know you said that you never imagined you would be a coach. You said you
Yeah.
never really wanted to own a gym, anything like that. But
Yeah.
I feel like was there some at some point maybe did like was there a coach maybe that you worked with in the beginning that kind of inspired you to be like, oh, I can own my own gym. I could do this. Was there somebody maybe you looked up to a little bit? And it could maybe not even be a boxing coach, maybe a coach from the multitudes of different sports you play that you were like, man, there's got to be something that coaching thing. There's something to that. Like, do you have a moment like that at all or anything?
I think for me, I would say the main driver was like hyper competitiveness.
Okay.
Like when I first started coaching, when I was coaching in other people's gyms, at least when I first started, they anybody that had any ability, the more experienced coaches would keep for themselves because they thought maybe they could make money on them when they turned them pro.
Right. Right.
That's like you're coaching on spec at
Yeah.
that point, right? So the coaches are like speculators about who's the talent in the gym, and
Yeah.
the most senior coaches will often take those fighters thinking, oh, we're going to turn them pro, we're going to make a lot of money off of them. It's like mining for talent, sort of like, right?
Yeah.
And so my first team, no lie, my first team of boxers that I would take around was I had a woman back when nobody wanted women, and women's boxing was in its infancy. I had a guy with one eye, which is illegal. You can't box with one eye. I didn't know that,
How'd
but
you get away with that?
yeah. So yeah, did some bad decisions, very bad decisions on my part.
Hey.
No, we let him box one time, and
Yeah.
we're very careful, and it was under a physician's care.
Right.
So,
He'll
uh,
listen. I guarantee he'll never forget that experience too. You probably did a big thing for him.
yeah, yeah. And I had an illegal immigrant who kept getting picked up and arrested and stuff like that. I kept
Yeah.
having to get him bailed out of jail and stuff like that. But that was my first real team, and we were successful, and we looked good, and so then when I moved back home, I had been coaching in so many different gyms, and I kind of knew I really wanted to take this scientific approach. That was really
Yeah.
important to me. And so I came back to Tennessee, and I was trying to do that and just couldn't find just the right home, and so that's why I had to start my own gym. I didn't want to, but uh, you know, I was the person that was willing to work with women also at a time when others really didn't want to, because women's boxing wasn't glamorous. There was no money on the pro side,
Right.
and there wasn't even world championships, or they had just started. So yeah, so nobody wanted to work with women either. So I was kind of
Yeah.
again taking the people that no one else wanted to work with, but I felt good about what I was doing, and I was successful with it, and I'm now proud of the fact. It used to bother me that people would be like, "Oh, she works with women." I was like, "No, I work with men too." In fact,
Right.
if I look at my career, I've worked with more male boxers than I have women boxers, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But and so that used to bother me, but now I'm very proud of it because yeah, we did a lot on not only locally but with the women's national team. We were able to really do a lot with that, and I think that is the momentum that took us into 2012, and that's why it was so successful for us.
Yeah.
That gym that first gym that I had. So I'm on my fifth gym location not out of choice, but because every
Right.
time rent goes up and people get displaced, small nonprofits or small, mom and pops, whatever, they get displaced as well. And so
Yeah.
we're on our fifth facility, but I remember it was like our second or third facility, and that's when Caleb Plant came into the gym. And I know
That's my
Caleb, that's your boy.
that's my boy. That's my favorite boxer, man. I
Yep.
love it.
So, he went basically Caleb, and I'm not going to tell a story because
Yeah.
Caleb can tell his story better than anyone, but Caleb essentially went from rags to PBC royalty, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
But I would say Caleb, he was one of the most athletic boxers that I have ever worked with.
Yeah.
He was a successful kickboxer as a teenager. He's trained by his dad, and uh, he was in the gym sparring one day because they would kind of gym hop, go
Right.
around and train in his dad's dojo,
Yeah.
and so I basically told his dad, I don't know anything about kickboxing, but I know in boxing you can make a lot of money. So
Yeah.
if you want to do pro boxing, if your son wants to do pro boxing, that's the only thing that he can do. You
Yeah.
can't do kickboxing and boxing at the same time and expect to
Right.
be good at boxing. Maybe
Yeah.
you can still be good at kickboxing, but not at pro boxing. And so they thought about it, and literally that next Monday they were in the gym regularly, and he won the 2011 National Golden Gloves in
Yeah.
the light heavyweight division. I think he was just shy of 19, if I'm remembering that correctly.
Yeah. Sounds about right.
And
Yeah.
then, yep, and then he was a training partner in 2012 in London, and then he did the World Series of Boxing, which was the International Federation's, I call it like a semi-pro league that they did for a few years.
Yeah.
So he did that, and then the rest is history. You know the rest of the story.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I study him all the time. I study him all the time. Hey, and listen, one day I'm telling you guys, I'm gonna call right now. One day he's gonna be on here. I'm gonna be interviewing him
Yeah,
on here, and he could tell the rest of the story then too.
I
So
I bet he would. Yeah.
you gotta have big dreams, big dreams. So we got some people in the chat here. I got a fan question. They
Oh,
said for you, they said, have you ever seen someone rise to competing in the Olympics? Someone as fast as Deontay Wilder has. Has anything like that ever happened since
yeah.
you've seen?
So, man. So yeah, it's a really interesting story about Deontay because so in 20, so that was the 2008 Olympics,
Yeah.
and so leading up until that games, I was out there in Colorado Springs for a few of the training camps and things like our women's training camps would overlap with the men's,
Yeah.
and so one of the last training camps that they had in Colorado Springs for the men's team, because remember in '08 it was just male boxers,
Yep.
and so I watched a little bit of their practices, and then we had I remember that we had a few months later we had this ESPN show in Nashville,
Yeah.
and I was involved because they were going to use the our gym's ring for that event. And I was also trying to get one of our boxers on as a pro debut and all that. You know how that
Yeah.
is.
Oh yeah.
Wheeling and dealing for the boxers,
Yep.
trying to do my part as a good coach. And the guy that was putting on that card was from up in the Northeast, and he said, "Hey, you've been out there in the training center." I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "Hey, if I were gonna sign somebody, who do you recommend that I sign?" And I said, "Well, I think I know who you want to sign
Yeah.
because everybody's talking about Boo Boo. So I think that's who you want to sign." And this
Yeah.
is on the phone, right? I don't know this guy.
Right.
And he's like, "Yeah, that's who everybody's talking about." And I said, "Well, I've been out there and I'm super excited about this boxer that I've seen who looks like he is a sponge. He looks like he's the guy that's first in the gym, last in the gym, every single exercise, every drill. He's taking it seriously, is applying himself, and that's
Yeah.
Deontay Wilder." And I said, nobody knows this guy. He comes out of basketball. I'm telling you, nobody knows him, but that's the guy that I think is going to surprise everyone. And I happen to be right. He's the bronze bomber now because
Yeah.
he got a bronze medal that year. So
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
that was I was really happy for him. Plus, he's from my area of the country, so that was cool too.
Yeah. Well, and it's just, the reasoning he started boxing, all that. I think he started boxing to kind of pay for some medical bills for his sick child and stuff like that, and just okay, it's just an amazing story. And he actually, I think he's kind of mulling over retirement right now. So I actually did a little segment on him on my last episode, just talking about you know how thankful I was for him that he kind of resparked heavyweight boxing there for a little bit. Just when he was exciting, to say the least, he was an overachiever. He went further than probably a lot of people ever thought he was going to in the Olympics and in the pros. So just an inspiration for someone like me too. Where I started boxing a little late myself. And just something where it's never too late if you want to chase something. Just to you know you got to at least start. And see where it takes you. So I love that. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
100%. Before we get off that topic, I have to say, anybody that's watching that's thinking, "Oh man, I missed the window.
Yeah,
I think I'm too old to box." I'm telling you right now, you are not.
yeah, it's
You
true.
can't. Why believe other people? Just because the average age for the Olympics, or just because the average age of who's turning pro or whatever. Everybody's different. I
Yeah,
might had I think it's my nephew's like elementary school teacher. I heard said something like popcorn, right? You get popcorn in a hot pan.
yeah.
The kernels don't all pop at the same time,
No, they
pop
don't.
at different times. I thought that so
You're right.
these school teachers, they have good little stories for a reason, because
Yeah,
they it all. Development is different for every person. But the other benefit of coming into boxing later is that you get to bring all of that life experience into
yes,
into the ring as well. I
yeah,
never boxed for a professional title. I only had a handful of fights, but I know that my background helped me in those fights, and that's why I never lost. And
yeah,
I think anybody who really wants to do it, if you've got that drive, then it doesn't matter how old you are. You're going to
yeah.
make it.
Well, you know too more than anybody from the scientific standpoint. I know you're a real scientific guru, but everyone's athletic prime is different. Like, you see so many guys that they have a lot of success early in their career. Then after 26, 27, they just drop off. And there's some dudes that come in like myself. I mean, I can't lie. I was a late bloomer. I played high school sports and I was all right. I was never a top stud or anything like that. But, then I joined the army and did, I was kind of middle of the road when it came to PT scores and all that stuff. It wasn't, I wasn't bad, but it wasn't anything great. And then like, I was 25, 26, and all of a sudden I was like, whoa, I'm able to play basketball better than I ever was in high school. I'm joining all these rec leagues. I started boxing a little earlier than that, about 2021 is when I started boxing. But, I kind of came into all this all of a sudden and I was like, this is the best I've ever felt, the best I've ever looked, when it came to body composition and everything. So I'm being serious. If I could be an advocate for what she's backing up, I completely agree. You never know, what your body's capable of, and I think if you're pushing your limits and testing yourself, that's the most important thing. You know.
Yeah, and there's plenty of examples of, we're mostly talking about professional boxers, right? There's plenty
Right.
of examples of people who have had successful professional careers and come into the sport later. And the current person that's the best example of that is Jake Paul.
Yeah.
Now, some people love him, some people hate him, whatever,
Yeah.
but he is learning on the job, right?
Yeah.
You can't fault him for not having an amateur career. He's got the money, he's learning on the job, right?
Yeah.
And when did he start fighting?
Like
He's got some,
23.
yeah, he's got some decent skill.
Yeah. Yeah.
A
And
lot of people,
he's looking better every fight. I think.
exactly, learning on the
Yeah.
job. Layla Ali did the same thing. Her
Yeah.
first fight, Layla Ali did not look good.
Yeah.
Let's be honest. But by the time she was world champion, she was a solid boxer.
Oh
So
yeah.
there are examples of that. And that, basically if you're looking to turn pro, there are basically three pathways. So the first one is that use the amateurs as your step ladder. You're getting your reps for free
Yeah.
or cheap, right? And this is where you're putting together those glimpses of greatness.
Yeah.
You're you're cutting your teeth,
Yeah.
and the stakes are super low. And in fact, I've met a lot of worked with a lot of boxers like on the national team and whatnot. And I almost would say for every amateur boxer, you almost want to look forward to that loss,
Yeah.
because if you go too long without a loss, some people, it starts playing with their head a little bit, right? Embrace the loss,
Yeah.
get
Yeah.
it out of the way, get it over with. And the only time you need to worry about your record really is when you're a pro.
Right.
So
Right.
so the amateurs, if you think about it that way, the amateurs can be really low stakes, low stress for
Right.
you. And then I would say the second pathway to the pros is when you've got money to time collapse.
Yeah.
So these are the actors, these are the influencers. This is when they can put a lot of money into it and just kind of learn on the job and rock it
Yeah.
to the big venues. So those are the examples of Jake Paul, Layla Ali, whatever.
Right.
The third, which is the kind of the traditional, is the regional fighter, that tries to win, and then it's the hardest path because they're basically trying to get the attention of a promoter by being a good fighter.
Right.
It's uphill climb, really tough, but those are basically the pathways to the pros. Um, a lot of that's why in the US, a lot of our Olympians, they don't stay in the pipeline. They get that Olympic status or even a medal, and they use that to launch their career.
Right.
And then like the Jake Pauls and people like that, they're the ones that have the money, celebrity status. And then the regional fighters, those are the people that think, oh, if I don't do it now, I'm never going to be a pro. And
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
the thing you got to remember with the promoters, they're in the promotion business. They're in professional boxing because they're trying to make money. That's
Yep.
it. They're not trying to do
Yeah.
anybody. They're going to look at you and ask themselves, or they're going to ask you flat out, okay, who's going to watch you? What do you
Right.
bring to the table? Who wants to buy tickets to watch you fight? Who's going to buy a pay per view to watch you fight? And back in my day, the promoters had fight fans that would buy tickets. But now a fight fan, they can see all kinds of options for boxing anytime they want. Everybody's got a smartphone. They can
Yeah.
pull it up, watch boxing anytime. So now the promoters have a little bit more difficult job trying to get people's attention and that entertainment dollar. And
Yeah.
so they aren't just competing with other fight promoters. Now they're competing with, MMA, other pro
Yeah.
sports, like even ESPN. There's multiple streaming channels and all kinds of stuff. So the promoter, for them, it's all about selling tickets. Uh, and if you're thinking about turning pro, if you're about to talk to a promoter, you got to ask yourself, what do I offer the promoter?
Right.
Do I already have a built-in fan base? How many followers do I have in social media? That's a big one now that they all want to know.
Yeah.
How can I help market their event?
Yeah.
Just putting on a good show, unfortunately, is not a guarantee.
Yeah.
It really is. Do you already come? You already come with a built-in audience.
No, you're absolutely right. And somebody just put in the chat box down there, they said Jake Paul's team are master marketers. And that's the truth. I feel like I think that's really where Jake Paul catches a lot of the hate. I mean, there's so many, and you know this more than I do, with you being so tied into the coaching community, but there's so many good boxers out there that just cannot market themselves and cannot get people to get behind them.
Yeah.
And then there's so many guys like Jake Paul, that love him or hate him, people are going to watch every time he fights, and that's just what it is. And, people want to hate and say, well, it's unfair. There's guys that have been waiting in the shadows for years for just even a quarter of the opportunity Jake Paul's had. But, I'm a lover of Jake Paul on this channel. A lot of people give me flack for it. It is what it is. I'm cool with it. But I think he's doing great things for the sport. I think he's doing great things for women boxing. And I think that, and we'll get into women's boxing here in a minute. I love women's boxing, but like I think he's bringing more eyes to the sport, and when there's more eyes of the sport, there's more opportunities for more guys to showcase their skills. So you can get on the train or you can get ran over by it. I think at this point, you know.
Yeah, and he'll say himself, it really is all about marketing.
Yeah,
If you haven't seen it, so when the Tyson fight was coming up,
yeah,
right, and they rescheduled it, so it is still going to happen.
yeah. And
I,
actually, they just put out today that he's going to be he found a fill in for the July 20th. It literally just got posted a couple hours ago. So
oh,
he's still fighting on July 20th. He's fighting Platinum Mike Perry, who is an ex UFC guy who moved to bare knuckle boxing.
oh,
And
okay.
so yeah, so he's like part of the bare knuckle fight club or whatever now. But he's able to get in there for a regular boxing match to fill in for Mike Tyson while he's healing up. So he's actually going to be in the ring on July 20th still.
And you got to give him credit. He is taking steps up every time.
Yeah,
He little steps, little steps. So
yeah,
he's moving himself along nicely, in my opinion. And so anyway, when the fight was coming up, I decided to watch that Netflix special about him, Jake
yeah,
Paul Problem Child or whatever.
yeah,
Very interesting. So if you haven't seen it, I would encourage people to check out that little documentary about him. Give some nice insight
yeah,
into where he's coming from as a fighter. And in my opinion, anybody who steps through those ropes, they deserve our respect.
for sure.
And he legitimately came to the sport. Like, okay, yes, he was a YouTube star or whatever and a multimillionaire and everything, but he is really fighting. And
Yeah,
so he's got my respect for that reason, if nothing else. But I do also appreciate that he has an interest in paying fighters a living wage for the experts that they are, the courage that it takes to get into the ring, and the risk that they're putting on the line every time they climb through the ropes. So I appreciate that he's
yeah,
trying to pay fighters fairly. He's using his platform, but also he's putting his money where his mouth is.
yeah, yeah. So I think that's a perfect segue into. I want to touch on women's boxing just for a little bit because I know I consider you a pioneer in a lot of ways. For a lot of things when it comes to women boxing. But I guess can we start with just like and I know we're not necessarily running short on time just yet, but we'll get there. I know how we are. We'll talk. But can you do like a brief kind of overview of like women's boxing? Like I know that there was times that it was like it was showcased, then it was like it was banned, then it was allowed. Can you kind of give like a brief background on that?
Yeah, so women have been boxing as pros for about as long as men. Now, not ancient Greek times, right? But
Right.
after that, like as far as professionals go. So some of the most famous women professionals historically, they were doing like carnival shows and stuff like that. Like anyone that thinks they can beat this woman, pay the money to get into the ring with her kind of deal.
Yeah.
And so they were doing that, and boxing was on the radio before television.
Yeah.
There were boxing matches on the radio, and then television, of course, and women's professional boxing popularity would kind of wax and wane, and then the big jump was when Christy Martin and Deidre Gogarty fought on a Tyson undercard,
Wow.
and Christy Martin, I think it was that 1996, I want to say.
Yeah, I want to say either 96 or 97, something like that.
And Christy Martin was a total slugger, right? And Deidre Gogarty from originally from Ireland, I believe, an
Yeah.
outboxer primarily, and Christy just took it to her and was covered in blood, her own, her
Yeah.
own blood, I think, and won the hearts and minds of a lot of people that had tuned in for that Tyson fight. And she ended up getting the cover of Sports Illustrated that year, huge deal, and signed a contract with Don King for $1 million, but it was 10 fights at $100,000 each, which would make her the first female boxer to box for $1 million. And I don't think I don't think they ever finished all 10 fights.
Yeah.
But by the time I want to say just a few years later, is when you had the famous daughters come along. So uh, Jackie Frazier,
Yep.
Layla Ali, and some others started, kind of dipping their toe into pro boxing. And of course, Layla Ali was the most successful of all of them. And really, her money, she did make money fighting, but the majority of her money came from endorsements.
Right.
I think at one point she had a car. She had an Adidas, I think, at one point.
Yeah, I
And
think you're right.
so, yeah, and then she just launched her career from there and was doing commentating and a lot of other stuff.
Yeah.
And then I would say it dipped a little bit again. Women's professional boxing dipped a little bit, and then we're in like this super deep, like never before. So
Yes, I agree. I agree.
yeah, so now you've got, I mean, I'm not even gonna name the stars, but the majority of them, coming out of their amateur experience
Yeah.
for the first time ever, so I would say when people tell me that they wanna turn pro, my first question to them is, "Okay, why? Why do you wanna turn pro?" Because I really don't think everybody needs to turn pro. Just because you've got a large skill set in the sport, don't feel like, "Oh, I have to turn pro." You gotta really want it.
Yeah.
If you're thinking about turning pro, because it is a hard way to make a living. It's even a hard way to make pocket change, if you're like, "Oh, I just wanna do a little." It's a hard way, to make some money, so and then, of course, I'm an Olympic coach, right? So part of me says, "Hey, if you got some ability, why not just stay in the pipeline,
Yeah.
let's enjoy your amateur career a little bit more, maybe get you on the next Olympic team."
Right.
Um, I would also say to somebody that's wanting to turn pro, I would also say, "Okay, don't feel like you gotta wait until you're the best." You know, don't be afraid to learn on the job. You're not If you have the right support staff behind you, and that's important. You gotta have the right network. You gotta have the right support staff. You gotta surround yourself by people who are looking out for you. So
Yeah.
that can be a trainer, manager, other support staff that are gonna help you not get taken advantage of, basically.
Yeah.
Um, then if you have that right support staff, you can learn on the job.
For sure.
Um, Before you turn pro, I would say, get those reps,
Yeah.
get those free reps in the amateurs. Why not?
Right. Can't beat it.
Just the amateurs is where you're going to figure out, how do you respond to setbacks and obstacles, and how are you going to react, right? The amateurs is where you establish your style. It's where you figure out, what is your work ethic, and I would say, by the way, number one, you got to be internally motivated. You can't
Yeah.
don't be that person that says, "Well, I gotta have a wake-up call. Coach has to call me to get me out of bed." Mm-mm.
Right.
Your coach should be focused on teaching you boxing, not motivating you.
Yeah.
So, if you're not internally motivated, definitely you do not want to turn pro,
No.
you know? So learn how what kind of pro you're gonna be on the amateur level. Figure out what kind of work ethic do you have. Practice holding yourself accountable. Make sure you can do your road work. Treat practice like you're going to a job. No entourage, no hanging out. Treat it
Yeah.
like a job. And then I would also say heart.
Yeah.
You gotta practice your heart. I'm talking about reps, right? All of this is
Right.
stuff to practice. Humble yourself. Be willing to learn. Be coachable. Um, don't take yourself too seriously.
Yeah.
Do your best. Um, squeeze everything you can out of out of the out of your amateur training.
Yeah.
And then I think I already alluded to it, but mindset, critical, critical. Not just
All
that.
fear.
Yeah, exactly. And being positive, right?
Yeah.
Understand that you're on a journey. Treat other people with respect in your gym. Um, and then I would say the other thing is you got to let your hands go.
Yeah. That's the truth. That
It's
was a problem I
boxing.
had in the beginning. I used to have a big problem with that in the beginning. I just whether it'd be a specific drill or whatever. Sometimes I just held on to him, and I wouldn't let him go. And that's the big thing is you're not gonna get anywhere if you don't throw. You know.
Yeah, it's boxing.
Yeah.
Offense is a requirement.
Yeah, it is.
Promoters, spectators, judges, they're all influenced by aggressive fighters.
Yeah.
They're all influenced by not just boxing off that front foot, moving forward, but being threatening to an opponent and then actually letting your hands go. You can't score points without landing punches.
Absolutely right. You're right. Looks like we
Yeah.
got another question down here from the chat. Thank you guys also for being in here. We've had quite a few people kind of coming in and out, and people are commenting. So this is a good sign. So I got someone said down here, might have missed it, but was there a specific boxer that gave you the most gratification watching them grow as a boxer?
Watching them as a pro?
Maybe I think let's kind of rephrase it. Maybe like was there someone that you maybe got to work with, I don't know, in their amateur career or whatever, that you've seen them kind of bloom into something big in the pro or even bloom big into the Olympics, maybe, whatever. He's like, I guess he's asking, is there like a certain name that I know it's kind of tough as a coach because it's hard to like say names, but
Yeah, because I'm gonna be honest. So I like try because at the end of the day I am a coach, right? And
right.
so I'm always like trying not to be a fan, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
No, it makes
I'm,
sense.
I'm always trying to plus in all fairness, I'm at the end of the day I'm a scientist too. So I'm doing a lot of study.
Right.
And so because of that, yeah, I don't think I really get to like fan out very much and like
Yeah.
I'm not if somebody's hyping somebody up, I think and I don't know if this is from a coaching point of view or a scientific point of view, but when somebody starts hyping up a boxer, like my first instinct is to be like, okay, but what about,
Yeah.
this or this? Or the same thing opposite. If they're trashing a boxer, then my first instinct's like, okay, but what about these positive
Right.
attributes? So, gosh, yeah, no, I can't think of anyone that pops out. There's so many greats. Of course, Clarissa is going to always
Yeah.
have a soft spot in my heart
Yeah.
because I don't know if your fans know about Clarissa, but
Oh yeah, they do.
she had she had failed to qualify
Yeah.
and lost at the World Championship. That was her opportunity to qualify. And so she thought her Olympic dream was dashed. And I remember sitting with her, we were in China, sitting with her in the stands. And I said, I know you're really down and everything, but you can still qualify for the Olympics. She's
Yeah.
like, how? And I said, well, look at your bracket. If this boxer right here from England, Savannah Marshall, if she does well enough, it has to do with like continental quota. If she does well enough in the tournament, she can pull you up in the rankings and you can still go.
Yeah.
So I recommend become her biggest fan the rest of the tournament. And the next day, Clarissa had turned it around and
Yeah.
became Savannah's biggest fan. And then sure enough, Savannah did well enough that she pulled Clarissa up. And then Clarissa turned everything around for that Olympic tournament, and the rest is history. And not just a gold medal there, but then repeated in
Right.
2016. That is a remarkable feat.
Crazy. This is crazy to hear you say these names. That we're watching on these gigantic pro cards now, and you're talking about them when they were like 17, 18, 19. It's just crazy to like put two and two together. Like, I hear Savannah Marshall, and I went, Savannah Marshall. I'm like, oh my god, like it's super cool. It's super cool as a fan and as a media person. It's just I don't know.
Well,
It's
and
it's awesome to pick your brand.
yeah, and I was just in Colorado Springs for the Olympic send off for this
Yeah.
Olympic team. It's a small team. It's only 8 boxers, but they've got some good talent.
Oh yeah.
And I would not be surprised if they come back with quite a bit of hardware. They've got well, on the women's side, they've got McCain, Gonzalez, Lozano, and then Alyssa Mendoza, who was able to qualify in the last qualifier. Very exciting boxer.
Yeah.
And then on the men's side, Roscoe Hill. They've got Jamal Harvey, Amari Jones, Edwards. Josh Edwards is the super heavyweight. You know, they've got a lot of potential. But they, at that Olympic send-off, they also had some of the other Olympians of the past. So like Richard Torres was there,
That's
Michaela
cool.
Mayer
Yeah.
was there, Jenny Fuge. Trying to think who else. I'm forgetting names, but
Yeah.
there were a lot of people there. It was really cool to see them.
That's cool to see the people from the past kind of come and support and give advice to the people that are heading over. You know, it's always good to pick the brain for people that are kind of, you know, you're the footsteps you're following in. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
Cool.
Because there is no stage like the Olympic Games. Oh, Queen was there. Um, Albert Garado. What was his? Was he the 2000 games? I can't remember now. But yeah, I mean that was the whole point, right? Is
Yeah.
so they had like a private meeting with the current Olympians so that they could talk about it. Because, you know, what I told the Olympians is just imagine the biggest stage you've ever been on, and now you got to multiply that by I don't know realistically. You multiply it by 3 or by 10. I'm not even sure because
Right.
it's just it's an explosion of, you know, how bright are the lights in the biggest stage you've been at yet? The lights are brighter
Yeah.
at the games. The loudest venue, louder at the games. The
Yeah.
most people, sold out. Every ticket is sold out at the games. Cameras in your face, you know, the media want to talk to you. Yeah, it's huge at the
Yeah.
Olympic Games.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And you know, wish nothing but the best. You know, I think that our team's going to do well. Like you said, we have. I've been following them a little bit. I follow USA Boxing on Instagram, and I've been kind of doing some research into them. And like you said, I think they're going to be a good team. I hope we come back with as much hardware as we can come back with. You know what I mean? I always love it. Love to see Team USA. Um, so we'll kind of get into these last two little topics here, and then we'll wrap up. I know you know I appreciate your time, but I don't want to overstep. You know, I know you got a night to get to. So, um, let's talk about just for a minute. Let's talk about your book. And like I said, I found out when I was doing some research on you, I found out that you wrote a book, and I was one of your students that didn't even know that you had a book. So, you authored a book called The Ultimate Boxer. I kind of want to hear what's your opinion. What do you think? I don't want to give the book away because I want people to read it. But what do you think builds the Ultimate Boxer?
Wow, that's a great question. Because I think my answer back in 2003 might have been different, not a little bit different than now.
Yeah.
I would say ultimate boxer is really it's sometimes called a universal boxer. It's the boxer who, in my opinion, you want to focus on your strengths as a boxer,
Yeah.
but you also need to prepare yourself for every kind of opponent out there. So the universal boxer can box at all distances. You know, they can infight as well as outbox, mid-range, and that kind of thing. They can box against a same-handed opponent, opposite-handed opponent. They can adapt, you know, to the characteristics of the opposition in front of them. Are they what are their tendencies? How can a well-trained boxer can neutralize some of the strengths of their opponent, capitalize on weaknesses,
Yeah.
right? But at the same time, really, again, you want to focus on your own strengths. Don't worry about your opponent. You just want to be well prepared so that you're doing those things in practice so that when they come up in competition, you're not surprised. That's
Right.
all.
Right.
So so I would say that's an ultimate boxer, aka a universal boxer. And I did not set out to write a book. I mean, why in the world write a book? But back in that day, you had to go to bookstores. There was no Amazon, you know, and the internet was still in its infancy. So the information that you were getting about boxing was dependent upon who was in your gym, literally who was in your gym. So what I was noticing was that a lot of the trainers that I saw would sometimes withhold information either because they didn't know the answer or they just didn't want to fool, with somebody in the gym. And it finally occurred to me that that's really dangerous, from a boxer point of view. And also, it bothered me that we couldn't, like, I wanted to level the playing field. I didn't think it was fair that, just based on geography, you're going to have a really good coach or a really bad coach. Like, that
Right.
didn't fair. So I just set out. I started writing little essays and handing those out to boxers at the gym and having other people read them and I did a lot of research, make sure that it was solid information. And
Yeah.
so eventually, yeah, that's why I published the book.
Awesome.
Was just to get a little, so the idea was go beyond the beginner book of, this is a jab, this is a cross, this is an
Right.
upper, this is a heavy bag, take it beyond that step. And then I'm a social scientist, so there's some of that in the back of the book as well.
I love it.
And then wrote it. I'm not a big reader, and
Yeah.
so I stuck with the essay format. And so the essays are like a page, 2 page, 3 page, the kind of thing that you could read maybe before practice starts or before you go to bed. You could read a little essay at a time.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that's the reason I wrote it. And yeah, I'm tinkering around with starting to write some more stuff too. So
Hey, I think you should. I think you should. So yeah, I mean, if you guys are listening to this, and you want to get the book. Yeah, it's probably available in a lot of bookstores, Amazon. I think if you're in the Nashville area, you can come hit up Coach Christy. She's probably got copies of it. She can sell to you and stuff. So hey, I'm looking forward. I haven't read it yet. I just found out about it a couple days ago, so I'm gonna get a copy myself. I'm reading it, and when I get in the new studio, y'all are gonna see a copy of it sitting right back behind me. So it'll be up on one of my shelves. So most definitely a little free promotion for you there, Coach. I appreciate everything you've done for me, so I got to pay it back.
I appreciate.
So
And if you're in the Nashville area, come to the gym. That's the other
yes,
thing I
I
would say.
was just about to bring that up. Yep.
Yeah. So our gym, we welcome everybody. It doesn't matter what your goal is in the sport. Uh, Makes no difference to us.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter your background. We want everyone to be able to meet their goal. We want to help people meet their goal, whatever that goal might be. We do have a lot of fitness boxers in the gym, but we train everybody the same. So we're gonna train you as if you're gonna have a long career in the sport, whether or not you really do.
Yeah.
Because we not only want you to have a good time in the gym and be safe, we also want you to be able to watch the next pay-per-view or and be able to watch it with new eyes and gain an appreciation for the sport that maybe wasn't there before, or add to your analysis of what it is that you're watching. So that's really important to us. And then if you want to actually learn to spar, we can help you with that. If you want to compete, we can help you with that. And it doesn't matter to us what your
Yeah.
goal is. We're not mining for talent. We're in the business of helping people,
Absolutely.
like, develop their own talent. You know what I mean? Their own skill. And what you do with that is your business.
Right.
You, but you do have to tell us so that we can help you.
Right.
We're very, very practiced of getting from point A to point B. So you're going to get an honest assessment of point A, where you're at. You're going to get an honest assessment of that. But then we got so much experience with point B. Whatever you tell us point B is, so we can give you a timeline and give you a pathway
Yeah.
of 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 what would be necessary in order to get to that point B.
Yeah. Absolutely. And just if I can add a little in there, just like someone who trained there for some months, while I lived in Nashville, I can't tell you guys enough how I've been in quite a few boxing gyms, probably about five now at this point. And this gym, I just the culture is just like no other, and the culture and the good feeling you guys have built there, it's unmatched, definitely from at least from anywhere that I've ever been. Not hating on other gyms or anything, but when you come into the boxing gym for the first time, and it doesn't matter what gym, you get a little nervous, you don't know what to expect, you don't know how the coaches are going to be, this and that, and the other, but the first time I walked into your guys' gym, I had those feelings, and then next thing you got Vern coming up to you. You got a few other guys. Everyone's like, "Hey, man, how are you? Where are you from? This and that." And then we get into class and it gets intense, right? And which is good. But at the end, you know, everyone's like walking out, hanging out, talking. I mean, I can't tell how many times I've sat and talked to guys in the parking lot for 30, 45 minutes after our classes. So it's a very good culture. And you, Coach Billy, Coach Ashley, and I think you guys have brought a few coaches on since I've been there, but you guys are doing a phenomenal job in building culture and building good competitive boxers and people that just want to have fun. So you guys are killing it over there. So
I appreciate that because culture is the number one thing, man.
yeah,
Culture is the number one thing, and we establish culture, but we build culture every single practice,
yes,
and and we take positive coaching seriously too.
yeah,
People learn better from that approach, scientifically proven. So,
yeah,
uh, well, we don't do everything just because it's scientific. I mean, we are an evidence based gym, of course,
right,
but
right,
also it's the right thing to do, right? I mean, I take coaching I very seriously because I know it's boxing. It's a dangerous sport.
yeah,
So, stuff can still happen, but we're going to do our best to make sure that people are equipped to have not only a successful experience, but let's also reduce injury, and let's make
yeah,
it fun.
yeah,
Quite, you should look forward to going to your boxing,
yeah.
and that's what we try to do.
Because if you're not having fun, I mean, if at the end of the day you're not going to want to go. You're going to dread it every day. You're going to be like, "Why am I paying for this?" or whatever the case may be. So that's the most important thing is you go in there. Whether listen, there's been days that I've walked out of the gym and I'm like, man, I got punched a lot in the face today and it wasn't as fun as normal. But you still have to like have it in your brain, where you're like, hey, I had a good time. I learned, I'm getting better, whatever the case may be. You have to just flip it and you have to have fun with it. Because if the minute you stop having fun with it, you're not going to stick with it.
Yeah,
That's
no,
how it is.
exactly right. That's
So,
exactly right. And you need to have you got to put Billy on your podcast sometime soon. Billy
oh, he's
Falco.
coming.
Yeah, that
Yep,
guy's a wealth of information.
he
All his
is.
pros, all of that. Yeah, it'd be fun.
Yeah, I'm gonna have Coach Billy on there. He's my favorite Italian guy, so I got to get him on here for sure. So, one last thing.
Actually, I just have to say,
What's
so
up?
he went to Scranton High School, and that's where the 2001 Women's World Championships
That's
was
right.
in Scranton, Pennsylvania. It's
Yeah,
crazy how it's such a small world. It's
yeah.
crazy how things come around.
I'm telling you, it's a small world and even smaller, boxing community. It's crazy to think about that. Just how, all these big pros that I watch, now, and a lot of people that are watching this or watching, and you're like, oh yeah, I know them. Oh yeah, I talked to her. I talked, and even kind of picking your brain a little bit. There would be times that I was like, um, oh yeah, there's this person I met on Instagram or whatever. You're like, oh yeah, I know them, and I'm like, it's just crazy to know, like, just how small the boxing community is.
Yeah.
So, and that is Fighters Nashville on Instagram. If you want to go follow them, I'm not sure what other if you guys have a Facebook set up. I'm not sure what all you guys have set up,
Yeah,
but
there is Facebook, but Instagram's probably the best, and you can
yeah,
talk to us from there.
yep,
Uh, talk to Billy that way, or you
yeah.
can find. We have a phone number. I'm not sure what the phone number is, but I think it's on. If you Google us or whatever, you can find
Yeah,
us. Yeah,
yeah, absolutely. And if you're in the Nashville area, if you're traveling through or whatever, stop in, come say hi to Coach Christy, and come get a training session if you can.
I'd love.
One last thing I wanted to hit. I know we're pushing time, but listen, if you got a little bit of time, I got the time. Um, so I wanted to talk a little bit about your role now. So you're on the board of directors of USA Boxing, right?
Yes.
Just wanted you
Oh,
to go into that for just a second, kind of talk about what you do there, because that's listen, you guys are what probably determines what some rule changes, whatnot, this and that. So this is a big thing for amateur boxing. I could not get your opinion on it.
yeah. So the rules for amateur boxing are really established by the International Federation. USA Boxing left the IBA, which was previously known as AIBA. They left it about a year ago, I think.
Yeah,
Trying to think, trying to remember my timeline here. But it's about a year ago because boxing was in danger of no longer being an Olympic sport. There were some issues between the IOC, the International Olympic Committee, the IOC, and the International Federation. So a group of countries got together. The U.S. was one of those countries, got together to form what is known as World Boxing, and that organization is attempting to become the new international federation.
Yeah.
So the IOC had suspended or removed the old international federation. The World Boxing's attempting to become the new international federation, and
Wow.
U.S. Boxing's rules are based on whoever that international federation is. And so, and then we can have some rule differences if they're safer or they make to us. So that's why in the United States, all amateur boxers box with headgear,
Yeah.
as opposed to internationally, like at the Olympics, you're going to see the men not have headgear.
Right.
That could change with world boxing, but that's the current rule. So that's where the rules come from. So yes, I am on the board of directors. I was elected to the board of directors by the LBC presidents. So if you know much about how amateur boxing is organized, have these local boxing committees, LBC,
Yep.
and the presidents voted me onto the board of directors. Out of the board of directors, there's a bunch of independent directors. There are 3 people who come to the board of directors from membership.
Yeah.
And then we also have some athlete directors. And so I'm one of 3 people that actually come from the membership. And I've got little over 2 more years, I guess, on my term. And then maybe they'll elect me for my next term. But the main thing for the board of directors, is really about governance. So governance issues, making sure that we're running a tight ship financially.
Right.
So it's in some ways some boring stuff, trying to make sure that the organization is viable, basically,
Right.
and then doing the right thing. So yeah, it's a little bit boring, but I think it's important work. That's why I ran for the position.
Absolutely. It's very important work. It's one thing to be the athlete or be the person that puts on the show or whatever, but the behind the scenes work has to get done. It's a nasty job and somebody's got to do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but no, I thought that was awesome when I heard that you were part of that. So I had to ask you, I had to see, what all that was. So that's awesome. And we appreciate, if we didn't have you guys running that, then we wouldn't have the shows we have now. So we got to give a big applause to the people that are behind the scenes running the puppeteer. You know what I mean? So absolutely. Well, listen, that's all I got for today. I mean, I think we covered it. We nailed it. We did a great job. We were out here. What were we 72 minutes. I hope I didn't take up too much of your
Is that a
time.
record?
That is a record. That is a record. But I'm glad. Hey, I'm glad we did it because we covered a lot of good stuff. And the beauty of it is too. Like we did this live now, but as soon as we get off of here, it's going to be archived as a regular YouTube video. So you'll be able to go back and have anybody watch it. You can go watch it yourself. Or if you want to send it as a link to other people or whatever, or share it, it'd be just like a regular YouTube video. So that's why one of the benefits of doing the live. So awesome. So we'll get even more people watching it.
Thanks for having me, man. It's actually a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll have to do it again sometime. And I know we talked about some possible short form stuff coming up, so we'll talk more about that. And we'll definitely have some fun with that as well. So
Excellent. And
awesome.
next time I'll have a tripod or something so not
I
hold
feel that your shoulders have to be burning now. Hey, I saw you had to
you.
switch back and forth.
Yeah, so hopefully not too wiggly for your viewers.
No, everything was good. Everything looked good. We were good. So again, thank you so much for your time. Please, go follow Boxing Resource on Instagram. Please go follow Fighters Nashville. If you're new to the channel, please consider giving me a subscribe. We're going to be working a lot with these guys, and we only have bigger and better interviews coming. So we're going to keep them rolling. I have a weekly episode I do every week. Tomorrow's the day for that, so we're going to cover tank and a few other things. But yeah, again, thank you so much for coming on, Dr. Christy Halbert, and hope you have a great rest of your night. And I'll be in contact with you very soon. Okay.
All right. Good night.
All right. Have a great night.